Hannah, welcome to Art and Cocktails. I am so excited to chat with you today on the show. And I've been, having you in my community privately, and I can't believe we didn't have you on the podcast earlier. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Kat. It's awesome to be here.
I'm so excited. So you are a very unique, you are like a unicorn of the art world. You're an artist and you also help creatives with accounting and taxes. Can you tell us a little bit in a few words, like who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, I'm a painter first and foremost. I've been a painter since 2005, and I'm still actively a painter. So, just had a solo show 2 months ago.
Congratulations.
Which, thank you. But I went back to school for accounting basically because like taxes just like hit me like a shovel to the face when was starting out as a young artist, and I felt just almost insulted at the lack of preparation that I had for it. Like, oh, you're gonna have to do this all on your own. When an accountant first told me that quarterly taxes existed, I was like, why did no one in all of my education, why did nobody ever mention this? So I was like, this can't be this way. So I really the sort of short version of my story, and we could do the longer version, but the short version is that I went back to school to study taxes because I was like, it's the one part that you can't avoid. And I know that my community needs it. So it's just, I felt like artists are really, really badly served with that stuff. A lot of accountants kind of don't get us, don't understand that what we're doing really, really is a business. They think we're all hobbyists. And I was like, we need someone on the inside.
I,
So.
yes, and I want to talk about a few things already. I know your story like unlocks all these things, but I want to say too, I love the word that you use, insulted, because it's like I think part of the problem is, and this was my experience, is you go through art school, but no one talks about sales, no one talks about taxes or any of that stuff. And it's almost like assuming you're never going to make any money from your art. But I think for
Mhm.
most of us deep down, we want to because it's a way of connecting with people. It's not about the money because we could have any job, but we love the feeling of someone getting what what we've created. So I
Mhm.
really love that, this is your dharma. You're meant to educate the masses on this part of a life, which you're right, we can't avoid. I'm going to go back for a moment. I feel like I
Sure.
always ask you about taxes first. Let me ask you about your art first. Tell me about your work,
Oh.
please.
What a delight. It's interesting how it is related to the money side of things in the sense that, like, anyway, I feel like in my last show, I just radically changed my work and I was like, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to make the work I want to make because I felt a less of a like need for the art to have to support my life. So my recent work changed quite a bit. Um, in the recent past, my work has been about like I'm a pretty tightly realistic painter, but on the more maybe conceptual side of things. So I like to stay away from the corny side of realism. So I've been painting weeds for a long time because I love them as a symbol. They're nature, but they're like nature without permission. Um, and I think they just make such a good metaphor. There's all kinds of metaphors you can make with weeds, like they're only considered weeds if they're on the wrong side of the border, or, they're um, like a tough girl. They're just like gonna just grow and take up space and move towards the light. They're just like such a beautiful, hopeful sign of life to me.
Mm, I love that.
Um,
And they're so beautiful
yeah.
too. It's so funny how we labeled them, but actually visually they're so much more interesting than some of the more like, bred plants that we have.
Yeah, and it's so funny to me that they are about that just a judgment. Like a weed is only a weed over here. Over here it's desired. It's about being wanted, So it actually really there is no scientific definition for a weed. It's just kind of like a human judgment layered on top.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I'm gonna be
yeah.
thinking about that all day.
Well,
I love that.
yeah.
Well, I can't wait. I'm gonna include your work after, after our listeners are done listening, they can check out your beautiful paintings. And I can't wait to see your new work too. I've been a
Awesome.
little MIA, but congratulations again on your show. And I love the
Thank
freedom. I
you.
think this comes with, for me, it's come with age and it's come with like the experience and facing some of my deeper fears to have that peaceful trust in yourself to make the work that you want to make versus like trying to prove something or worrying
Hmm.
about it. So
Yeah.
I'm really I love that you mentioned that. And how was your opening? Did you have a good experience?
The opening was fantastic. And again, it totally was affected by that sort of money thing because I didn't feel hung up on it. I mean, of course it's important, but I just felt like I've made beautiful work. I've made work I feel really, really proud of, and I'm excited to show people that I care about. So I kind of like went to the opening with that attitude. And, I mean, to be totally, totally honest with you, I wish it had sold better than it did, but I had a great time regardless.
Good.
I
I'm
was
so
like,
glad. I'm so
yeah.
glad. And there's so many factors too. It's like we were just talking to a girlfriend and she was telling me how her galleries are a little worried because it's a market downturn. So it's like sometimes
Mm,
it's not even the work, it's just like the current climate, which is temporary. And I know in perfect timing, all the pieces will find the perfect homes too.
yeah.
So, but I'm
Yeah.
very excited to check it out. And speaking of sales, now I can ask you about taxes.
Go for
But
it.
I think, well, one of the things is just I love your mission, and you do such a beautiful job at normalizing this part of life because so many of us, there's this huge gap between the dreams that we want to have. Let's be honest, we all wish for more money and more success because that's a natural thing to grow. And then the
Mhm.
other part of us in the art, as artists, especially those of us who've gone through like an art school, we have so much conflicting information or lack of information at all. And maybe there's this like lack of knowledge mixed with shame and then mixed with confusion. And then here's our dream over here. And like all those things kind of stand between us taking action and moving towards those big goals, like having to sell more work or creating other income streams. And my
Mhm.
question to you is, why is it important for you, both as an artist and an educator and someone who teaches people about taxes and accounting and finances, really? Why do you think it's important for artists to keep dreaming bigger and not be afraid of the things like the tax or the quarterly tax and the self-employed tax?
Oh, yeah. That's what an interesting and great question. I have not ever had that question before. I I mean, I think it's so important. I mean, I think honestly that art is important. And I think that we are often told, especially by people who aren't artists and aren't in the art world, I think we're often told and treated like art is not important because people don't want to pay what it's worth or, like set aside a realistic budget for it or, and they're always encouraging, you listen to politicians, you would think the only valuable careers in life are STEM fields or like science and tech and engineering. And I think art and all of creative work is really empathy building. And I just could not think of a more important task right now in the world, like it can be, and people use the word artists use the word just a lot, like, oh, I just make paintings, I just make jewelry, I just make mugs. And I think like there's nothing just about it. Like you bring joy to people's lives, whether it's because you make a mug that feels amazing in somebody's hand, or you make a painting that really speaks to somebody's sense of identity, because they know where to find an amazing artist like that, or it makes a conversation piece for them in their living room, and they like have all these interesting conversations because like you really are a connector, and the work really is important. And I think to me that's the core of why I do what I do, because I really believe in art, like, and I think you're going to have to pay taxes no matter what field you go into.
That's, yeah.
If yeah, and if you have your own business, the taxes will be, you know, more complicated than if you just had a W-2 with a day job, as an employee somewhere. And that freedom and independence, it's got a scary side because you have to handle this stuff like taxes, but oh my gosh, there's so much like that freedom that to make the work that you feel the world needs to see, I think is super valuable. So yeah, I guess really fundamentally, I really wish for all artists that they feel a sense of taking up space and like
Mm.
um really feel how valuable the work is that they're doing, because it really genuinely is at the end of the day. And so yeah, you have to do something with your days.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. That's such a beautiful response to that. And I also think art is so important. I mean, just imagine a world where we just do what only the essential of what needs to be done, and our mugs are all the same. And like it would just be horrible. It would be the most boring existence. And that's why
Hmm.
I totally agree with you. Now, something came to me. This question might not be formed. It's kind of form as I'm sharing it. But as you were talking, something came as like this fear and this almost like otherness when an artist might be at the early stages, or maybe their work hasn't quite taken off yet. And they have this like feeling that those rich, successful artists are like the other, and maybe they're doing something wrong. And there's like this weird, icky connotation, like, oh, it's a blue chip artist, and can
Mm-hmm.
you talk on this, because I feel like this is one of the things holding people back from being more successful financially, at least, is like
Hmm.
this fear that maybe we won't be respected by our current circle, or that we'll, become weird, or um
Yeah.
I just, it's not like a perfectly eloquent way of putting it, but I just get this feeling like artists almost stop themselves when they start like saying, oh, well, they're successful, like, and they write off like as if they can't be part of that world. And have
Hmm.
you had experience with artists who maybe are financially like growing and being more successful, and, maybe sharing some of the, myth busting things about that? Because I think like if you're a good person, you're going to be a good person, right? If you're committed to your art, you're going to be authentic to your art, even as you expand and grow.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly believe that last statement very much so. I mean, and also I hope we all strive to be better people all the time. I mean, I sometimes get kicked in the butt. I'm like, oh, right. Okay, I need to work on that, you know?
Me
Um,
too. Me too.
but I think I do think that, I mean, first of all, like I really want to just celebrate any artist, any creative person who become successful, who's trying to be successful, who's pre-successful, but also who becomes successful. And I really, really want to squelch the use of terms like sell out or, we use words like that to put down people who have financial success. Or even, I went to an art school that, I mean, some art schools have a degree of snobbery to them. I went to one like that. And they would say, oh, that's a commercial artist, and there was a bit of a tone to
That's
that.
the word I was looking for. And that it's like the minute you say it, it's like, oh.
Oh, they're a commercial artist, right? There's like a real, like, as though that means they lack integrity, their work isn't good, it doesn't take skill or effort. And I guess I think like our family needs each other. We're a bigger family than that. We don't need to be so tribal and so antagonistic to each other. And like to me, creative success is creative success. Like, let's celebrate all of it. Let's move all of us forward. I want you to sell out. I mean,
Yeah, me too.
let's stop calling that a bad thing. I want every artist in the land to have a completely maxed out solo 401k, you know?
That sounds amazing. I wish that for everyone listening, because I think that they're so in the hands of the right people, which, let's be honest, most of our community is so generous and kind-hearted and so
Totally.
concerned with important causes. Like, what
Hmm.
better place to put this money?
Exactly. Exactly. Even a commercial artist or someone doing work that isn't particularly my taste, I'm still pretty excited for them to be doing well. And I mean, I don't want to be down on other fields, but like, I don't know that we need another investment banker in this world.
No, we certainly don't. But they have no problem taking up space and taking what's theirs. So
Yeah,
we
and
could
I
take
just
a
want
page out of their book too.
totally, totally. I wish we had honestly a fraction of the thriving that's going on in that space. So
100%.
yeah, I think like using being it's good for us to be conscious about using words like sell out or, because it's really a put down for somebody doing well financially. And don't we all want to do well financially? There really is nothing that I think it's a false equivalent to say that commercial success or, financial success should signal a lack of artistic integrity. There's really no reason that needs to be true. And I could name you 10 artists right now who have incredible integrity as artists and are wildly financially successful. Um,
100%. I
so,
love
I mean,
that.
I think William Kentridge, I think, is really freaking amazing. His work, no matter what he does, I will follow it. I'm like, oh, wow. Ooh, he blew my mind. And like he's in every
So
big
good.
museum in the world. I mean, you could name a million. Beyonce also is like an enormous, enormous pop star at the nth degree of success in music. And she is such an artist. Like, you cannot deny what an artist she is, what attention to detail, even though, yes, of course, she's commercially successful as much as you possibly can be. You can't take it away from Beyonce how incredible her attention to detail and her artistic integrity is. So,
100%. Yeah, I think that's such a great exercise when your mind starts playing these stories or these labels to really disprove it and to actually see in the world examples of good people, you know, who might have the success that even a fraction of the success in Beyonce's case that we all want to strive for. Thank you so
yeah.
much. That was so thoughtful. And I hope that everyone listening feels like, you know, you have space to take up, and please take it because we need your beautiful work and contribution. Now I'm going
Yeah.
to ask you a little bit more about, you know, Sunlight Tax. You mentioned that you started this amazing company because you yourself, you were frustrated, you had no idea what was going on. And
Yeah.
that's why I came to you actually too. This was years ago now, but I was like, okay, now I'm making money. What the hell is going on? What do I do now? And artists, you know, it is scary when you first face that bill or you're like, oh crap, like now the IRS man's going to come knocking on my door. Can you tell us a little bit about the backstory of how it all began for you?
Sure. Excuse me. I I mean, it really began out of a sense of anger and frustration when I, tried to get my own taxes done by my dad's. I tried to do it on my own. I got a library book on freelance taxes and read that. And like, so I started following the deductions rules. Like, it solved one problem, but it didn't put all the pieces together for me. I was like, the quarterly tax thing I could not figure out from a book. And when I went to my dad's accountant, he just was so disrespectful. He clearly did not believe in the arts. And he just thought I was some dilettante, right? And I did not feel any sense of respect, or value. And I guess that really drove me because I just felt like, taxes can really trip you up. You can really get in serious trouble if you ignore them or do them really wrong or don't fulfill your legal obligations. Of course, artists need other help too. We need, great bookkeeping. We need a financial plan. We need to be putting money into our retirement, which is like, let me tell you, Kat, that is my secret agenda. It's like all artists having a giant pile of money in retirement accounts.
Yes.
But taxes is what you need, right? And so I just felt like let's start there. Let's start at the place that artists know they need it. And from there, if I can kind of build the trust and be like, let's keep you out of tax debt. Let's get you paying your quarterly taxes so you stop facing that like gut-wrenching, awful bill that's so high you don't know how you're going to make it in April. Like, there's a way to not have to feel that every year. Um, and if I can get you through that gauntlet, maybe I can talk you into maxing out your retirement contributions.
Yeah, that will be the next episode. I will definitely have you come back for that. But yeah, this is a beautiful place to start. And so many questions for you. So you were angry, you were frustrated. I had a very similar experience
Mhm.
with an accountant, and you just feel like an alien in there, like trying to explain what you do. And
Yeah.
so you went back to school and you learned and you're fully qualified now to do taxes and to educate others on that, which is incredible. What would you say is the biggest like question or frustration or just panic that artists come to you with when they first join your programs or work with you? What is that first
Yeah.
like thing that brings them to you? Just curious.
Yeah. It really depends a little on where they are in their career. I mean, Kat, you named a good one, like an artist who is just starting to make real money for the first time. That can, like, I like to be there to be like, let's keep this positive. Let's keep celebrating and you keep making money and doing what you're doing. Let's not get derailed because, yes, your taxes are going to go up when you start making more money and you're going to have to do more and put more systems in place to make sure that they stay on track. But that's doable. That's the thing that we can do. And so if you handle that, then you can just feel more free and easy about spending lots of studio time and like getting rid of that awful mental load of the fear around the money. to be totally honest, I think that setting up some good systems doesn't have to be hard. I am honestly, when it comes, I am not a person who loves to like sit over a budgeting spreadsheet and like count my pennies. I would so much rather be making art. And so to me, I'm like, let's get you out of these spreadsheets. Like, let's set it up, put in the work up front and let the thing do its, like let the system work for you. So you don't have to be looking at it all the time. Let's automate it.
Mm.
Because I don't know, that's how I am, is like, I'm willing to put in the work, but I don't want to have to work to maintain it like all the time. I want it to kind of put in the work once, work hard once.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, I've had like 5 tries. This was before I found you. And then a second time when I was like transitioning my business, I had to transfer my stuff from one app to another like 5 times. And that
Oh,
was like, and now that it's all set up, it's like a blessing. Like I literally will look and I will like say thank you to it because I remember
mm,
trying to import and integrate and it was like the biggest hurdle. So I want to prevent that first from for someone listening right
yeah.
now who needs to do to start this process. What is your favorite tool or app to just for the basics, like the most basic thing to keep track of income and expenses for an artist? Or is it a
Yeah.
spreadsheet? What would you recommend for someone who's just like, I don't do anything and I need to?
Yeah. Well, actually, so the pre-spreadsheet in my program, like I have a spreadsheet system that is part of my program. You can do it on a spreadsheet, and that's perfectly fine. Um, and I think for somebody just starting out, it's actually better than software, which is expensive to set up and can be quite confusing. Like you really need some training in double entry accounting, in order to be able to understand how you set up bookkeeping software. And I'm not saying don't do it. You can do it, but you have to recognize it's going to be a fairly large investment of time or money with a
Yes, it
bookkeeper.
is.
Yeah. And as you know, if you don't do it right, it will be another big investment to change. But I think I have one app that is a like to track one deduction, but I actually have like backing up a step in order to even get to a place where bookkeeping is possible. I have a recommendation for people, which
Yeah.
is to be sure that you open a separate business bank account.
Yeah.
That's that's the magic. I think a lot of people kind of stumble into the business side of their art. They don't necessarily think I'm running a business, right? That's not front and center. So they don't always realize to put in place those business practices that can be so helpful if you're more conscious about it. So I will say this, like, do not mingle your personal expenses and your business expenses. Separate it out, open a separate account. It does not need to be a corporate account. It can just be a, what your bank calls a personal account. Like that is okay. It just has to be a separate account, a different account, and you treat it like business. So your money from your business goes in there, you deposit it into there, and then you do your expenses out of there, whether it's a debit card that goes straight to that account or a credit card that you only use for your business. Because what that does is it creates a record for you. So then essentially those bank statements, and if you have a credit card, then on top of that, also a credit card statement, that becomes the basis for your bookkeeping. So I don't want anybody bookkeeping off of receipts out of a shoebox. That is like hell on wheels.
Let's
And
not do that.
I also don't want you printing out bank statements that are personal statements and going with a highlighter and trying to be like, okay, was that trip to Staples for business stuff, for art, or was that personal? That's misery. And I say from experience, because I did it that way before I learned better. So that separate business bank account, that kind of unlocks simple, clean bookkeeping and also gives you a paper trail, which is backup for all, it's backup proof for stuff that is very helpful for your records.
That is a great first step. I think that's a wonderful first step for anyone listening or a
For sure.
reminder too, because like, yeah, it's easy to get sloppy and start mixing things. And just when the time comes, everything should be separate. It just makes our life
Mm-hmm.
so much easier. Thank you so much
So
for that
much.
wonderful tip. And
Yeah.
now you also share, not sure if you're doing it right now, but I know you offer a wonderful free masterclass for people. Is this something that
Mhm.
you're still doing? Can you tell us a little bit what can people learn from you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm offering one on March 20th, actually. It's called Make Taxes Easier and Stash an Extra 130K in your savings.
Yes.
Um,
Very
so
specific number.
it is. Well, I'll show you the math where that number comes from. It's real. But the basically in this class, it's just a free 1 hour class, and I teach some of the systems that kind of help to simplify your taxes. So it's a little bit of myth busting about things people think you might need, but actually might be more complicated than what you need, and the things that are helpful, if you like a little bit of extra things people often don't realize could simplify their taxes quite a bit. So there's that side of it. And then, because like I said, it's my secret agenda to get artists to save money. And
Yeah.
there's so many, like one of the sort of things that going back to school for accounting unlocked for me that I would like open my eyes to was like, whoa, the tax code is not just there like taking money from us. It's giving all these incentives towards things like retirement savings and healthcare savings. And I was like, wow, when you look at like how the math works of the growth inside these tax advantaged accounts, it's incredible how much extra money you have when you use them. So I do the math about like what happens when you put money into those accounts.
Ooh, I can't wait to
And
see the math.
yeah.
That's so awesome. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
think it's like another pain point in the creative community that's like the last thing people talk about is retirement. It's like this thing we're like avoiding and even pretending
Mhm.
it's not there, especially when we're younger and you're like, no, well, I do want like obviously I think we're all going to be making art hopefully for a very long time, but also like we want to make sure we have some cushion and support as we
Mhm.
slow down with age. So I think that's such you're like an angel for the art world that is gonna save us from doom. And so it's so awesome. Thank you for doing all this work.
Yeah, my pleasure. And will it be okay if we put a link to that to register for
Absolutely.
that class in the show notes?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything, any
Awesome.
links, I will make sure our listeners can check the show notes once this goes live in about a week. And well, they'll be listening to it now when as you're listening, but we'll include the links to any upcoming classes you have or any offers that you have for our community as well, because I think it's so important. And it's your teaching style is very clear. I just want to give you like a really big shout out because you don't use any weird words. You don't confuse people. You break it all down into very bite size, but you don't make people feel dumb either. Like you obviously understand, like we just don't have this information because you've been there too. So
Hmm.
I really love the way that you present this stuff.
No, I appreciate it so much, Kat. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, Hannah, this was such a pleasure. Where can our listeners find you? You also have your own podcast too, right? Can you tell us where all the things are?
Sure. Yeah. So you can find links to everything at sunlighttax.com. I have a free visual guide to artist tax deductions that you can get there. And then my podcast is the Sunlight Podcast. And so there's at this point almost 2 years of an archive where I just explain, it's about 20 minutes per episode. And I just explain like, here's how to take a home office deduction. Here's how mileage deductions work. Here's why you may or may not need an LLC or things people get confused about with LLCs and just like various things that, they all come from my clients. They all come from people who genuinely had these questions or like when I see when something happens to three people, I'm like, that's a podcast.
I'm the
So
same way. I'm the
yeah.
same way. I just am like a sponge and then like whatever's meant to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And I also mostly
Totally.
learn on myself too. Most of the mistakes are from me. But
Seriously. Oh my gosh.
I love this. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
sharing your wisdom. And for everyone listening, make sure to check out the awesome masterclass coming up and all the other resources that Hannah's been working so hard on. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll have to have you back again to talk about
I'd love it.
retirement next.
Sounds great. I'd love it. Awesome. Thank you
Thank,
so much, Kat, for
thank
having me. I love the work
you.
you're doing. It's awesome.
Thank you so much.